Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks, and today we are here with some of the best episodes that we have, some of my favorite episodes to record. Pay-per-view previews. Today we've got UFC 303 coming up this weekend, and it's not the card we were expecting. It's not the card anybody was expecting, but somehow, some way, the UFC has managed to assemble what is a pretty solid pay-per-view. I don't think it's world-changing pay-per-view by any means, but you look at this card, you get excited. Obviously, light heavyweight title fight between Pereira and Jiri gets you pretty excited, but they managed to get a decent main card filled out as well to go with that. And the prelims actually have quite a few fun fights, nothing major, not a ton of ranked guys on the prelims, but the prelims do have quite a few fun prospects. So should be a fun fight card from top to bottom. We will obviously start it off with the main event. And first, I just want to get your guys' level of anticipation for this fight, because I know this is a fight people have been really waiting for and asking for. What are you guys excited for heading into UFC 303? Alex Pereira, Jiri Prochazka, Jerry, you can lead us off.
I mean, the first fight was a blast for the almost 2 full rounds that it lasted. And there was all that talk of, was it an early stoppage of Alex knocking out Jiri? Because he got right back up after the ref jumped in. Jiri came out after and said that he was out. It was the right decision, but wants to get it going again. And I'm excited. I think these are the 2 best guys in this division at the moment. 2 exciting strikers that anything can happen. I do think it's funny, though. I'm assuming you guys have seen the comments Yuri's been saying about Alex almost doing like black magic beforehand, which is giving him an advantage. Don't know what that's going to be about. Wonder if we'll see anything at the press conference Thursday night, but I'm excited. This is going to be a fun fight and as good a replacement as we could get for a Conor McGregor fight.
Yeah, especially with what was available. I think this is definitely I think even as a non-McGregor fan, someone could be disappointed that just you're not getting that McGregor fight finally. But I would think most fans, would be happy with the Pereira Jiri rematch on this, because they're both fun fighters that I always like to tune into. And then I think when they added Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes, I think that's a great fight. Uh, Unfortunately, the Anthony Smith fight, after the 4 different matchups and replacements, we ended with Anthony Smith Dolidze. But even then, he'll take it. And then I think a little Ian Machado Garry, Michael Venom Page is a fun little opener that I think it's a good mix up. Hopefully it's a good fight, but it's a good mix up. Kind of a newer hype train, I'll say, just from MVP or someone well respected, but maybe to or to people that are only UFC fans, they might not know of him. But a fun fighter in his own right, and then obviously Garry's still on his win streak and making his rounds on social media and such. So overall, I think the main card should be fun, and then yeah, I agree. The actual full card is pretty nice. So.
Yeah. So just from a wide viewpoint, like main event, like regardless of how you feel about these 2 guys, I think it's a fight where you just put these 2 guys together. I think their styles clash and create a fun fight. Just simple as that. I think the same can be said about the co-main, Ortega Lopes. Styles clash. I think that's going to be a fun one. Somehow we went from Jamal Hill and Khalil Rountree to Anthony Smith and Roman Dolidze. I'll enjoy that for what it is and nothing more. But yeah, this is a fun card with a lot of really good fights. Prelims have prospects: Joe Pyfer, Peyton Talbot, Vinicius Oliveira, Cub Swanson, Andre Feely is a fun matchup between veterans. So the prelims as well, great prelims. And then back to the main event. I think that I think that's one of the craziest interview clips I've ever seen. Jerry, you brought this up earlier, but Jiri Prochazka pleading with Alex Pereira not to use his shaman magic and fight like a man with no magical powers over the fight. Might be one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But that's coming from a crazy man who fights like an insane person. So I understand it. And if anything, I think that may result in a crazier fight than we were originally expecting. So how do you see this main event going down between these two guys? Obviously, it's a rematch. Do you guys see this looking like the first fight, or do you see this being a much different fight in comparison to the first fight? Anthony, we can swing it over to you first.
So overall, I mean, I think it'll probably go like the first fight. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that I probably will end up taking Pereira and stuff. But I had a feeling that Jiri could maybe pull it off. I know like just a bunch of factors, not that they're extreme, like 100% valid points, but I know Pereira lost the rematch to Izzy in the second fight. I watched the first fight back, and I looked like Alex was struggling a little bit with finding the target through the first couple rounds. Um, and I like Jerry's movement. And Jerry actually had a lot of leg kicks of his own too, and then he was dealing with leg kicks a little bit better in the second. So I just like the blitzing in and out, constant movement. He's throwing uppercuts too that I really like. They didn't. I think one landed. A couple of them were missing, but the uppercut looked really good. So and then maybe if he can get the wrestling going more in this one, get it going a little earlier as well to create the another feint or fake for Pereira to maybe swing for. So I don't. I just have a feeling that maybe Jiri can pull it off in the rematch. But besides that, like if I was trying to use complete logic, you would think Pereira, after seeing what Rakic just did to Jiri's legs, you would think Pereira would be able to do the same thing. And then his power and his counter punching. Ideally, he just needs that one, and so you'd think that knockout might come similar to the way it did in the first fight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can see a lot of similarities from this first fight, but it's just, I mean, the thing with Jiri is he can knock you out at any point. There's a reason he has 26 knockouts in his 35 professional fights. He is a killer, is lethal. We saw him knock out Alexander Rakic at 300. Saw him even get a submission against Glover to win the belt. And I think that aspect, in the first fight, Alex Pereira had the motivation of, I need to redeem or get revenge for Glover's loss. He doesn't have that as much this fight. I don't think that makes him any less dangerous, but it gave him that extra motivation on top to kind of get that win, get the belt back for his friend, his teammate, his coach, whatever it is, all of the above. And I'm not sure it's still there. I'm still leaning towards Alex Pereira. I think had this been a full training camp, I might be leaning more to Jiri's side of things. But I think just on the shorter notice, because it's 3 weeks they've had, 2 weeks even.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how exactly the whole backstage thing happened with
Exactly.
when did they start training the day it got announced, or did they start training the day the press conference got canceled? Because there was a week difference there. So tough to say exactly how long they've actually had to prepare.
Yeah, because for that, I feel like Alex has a better punching chance of just showing up on short notice like that and being able to get a finish done and win the fight somehow, some way. Whereas Jiri, I think if he had more time to prepare for the rematch, it would have benefited him far more. And that's just one of my concerns for Jiri in this is, I don't know, like you said, how many weeks, whether it's 2 or 3, it's still not a lot of time to prepare for one of the most dangerous guys in the UFC. And Alex Pereira keeps showing why he came to the UFC, keeps knocking people out, keeps winning in different styles of ways in terms of whether it's punching or getting him on like he did in the first fight. He got him on the ground, landed some elbows, finished the fight there. It's going to be a fun fight, and really it's one of those banging fights that one punch from either of them could send the other out and bring home the belt for him.
Yeah, and my one job is to remember the betting odds, and I forgot the betting odds. So betting odds, plus 120 on the Prochazka side, Pereira, minus 142 favorite. So very close on the betting odds with Pereira, slight favorite. All right.
I think that went down actually. I want to say Pereira. No, I meant this right now. What you just said. I thought Pereira, when I looked, was more of a heavy favorite. So
yeah,
but I looked like 3-4 days ago.
Yeah, Prochazka was plus 140 at one point, so it has dropped a little bit. So yeah.
Okay.
So I've thought a lot about this fight, and when this first fight happened, I feel like I did a pretty good job predicting how that fight would go. I said Pereira would hit him with the leg kicks, mess up his movement, hit him with the shot, knock him out. That's pretty much what happened. And not trying to toot my own horn because you can go read the Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira preview, and I got that one wrong. So, but point being, I feel like I had a good read on the first time these two guys fought, and I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe the same thing happens again because that's how these two match up. And then I was like, well, rematches are never really the same fight. Something always changes, even if you don't expect it. And going into a rematch, I always tend to lean towards the guy that can actually do things to improve his performance or do more things. So, for example, going from Usman 2 to Usman 3 with Leon. Leon got the takedown defense sharpened out, got the defense when his back is up against the cage, sharpened out, wins that fight, the trilogy. So when I look at this fight, how can either of these guys improve? And I think Prochazka has a lot more ways to improve, whether it's the game plan to how he approaches the leg kicks, whether it's checking them, whether it's countering them. Maybe he offensively wrestles more. You know, he landed a takedown in that first fight, and maybe this time he says, well, I want to land 2 or 3 in the first couple rounds and bank some early rounds. Maybe I can get Pereira to give his back, and maybe I can choke him out. And on the Pereira side, I don't think that was his best showing, but I don't think he has as much room to go out there and improve on his last performance. So that's kind of pushed me towards the side of Prochazka. And another thing I like about Jiri in this specific matchup is that I think in order to beat Alex, I think you need to be willing to go out there and take his head off. Like, I don't think you play 25 minutes of, touch kickboxing because you're going to get kicked in the leg too much and your legs are going to eventually crumble. That's what happened to Izzy when he tried to do that. Then in the second fight, he comes out and tries to take his head off. Unless you grapple him, obviously. If you grapple Pereira, then you can win a decision. But I think Prochazka has the things he can do to improve his performance and swing the fight in his favor a little bit. And I also think he has the mindset to go out there and try and knock Pereira out, which I think is the way that you beat him, considering his chin isn't the best. He doesn't have the best defense, and you can't really afford to be in there with him for very long. So I'm siding with Prochazka in the main event, and it's a flip because last time I did have Alex. So I'm flipping this time to Jiri, and I just think this one is his time to get it done.
Yeah, I do like the comment on like some of the takedowns, but at the same time, you look at the Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira fight. Jan took him down 3 times and still didn't come out victorious. So maybe Alex has improved or saw something in that fight that might make it more difficult for Jiri. I'm not convinced. So I do like what you're saying with Jiri. Probably has more room to grow. And the other thing is Alex just thinking, oh, it's going to be the exact same fight. I'm just going to roll in and just try and knock his head off because maybe he does that as he did in the second Izzy fight. He was trying to knock Izzy out. Izzy countered, and Alex was on the ground asleep. So you can see that with Jiri as well.
That's what, yeah. I think it's tough. Like I said, also, Pereira's been treating me real nice, He's been putting on amazing fights. He's been winning. He's been knocking out. So it's tough. And I'm actually genuinely a huge fan of him. So it's tough to go against him. When I do actually think he could win, there's a very solid chance that he could win. But I just have like that weird gut feeling for some reason this fight that Jiri can pull it off. And even watching that first fight back, I want to say, I don't know if Pereira landed. It was definitely under 10 like head strikes in the first round. Like he wasn't really finding it. Prochazka on the other hand, I thought swarmed him a multitude of times. Actually, nothing clean necessarily, maybe like perfect shots, but there was an opportunity for perfect shots, and he had more opportunities in those in the first round. So I think I'm also. And like you said, I think he has a lot of room to win the fight in other areas and improve, except I just don't think he just is going to check leg kicks. That's what worries me. So if, he's talking about all the black magic, maybe if he can look, inwards and, figure out how to check a leg kick or avoid a leg kick, then maybe he'll have a better chance. But we'll see. If anything, I'm excited. It definitely should be another good fight, though. Maybe, and if it goes longer too, I don't know who wouldn't be opposed to watching them fight more rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's another thing to think about is what if this fight does go longer? What if they do keep their distance a bit and Jiri kind of moves around, avoids the leg kicks? That might be a benefit to him later on because, I mean, the Izzy fight went to a 5th round when Alex won. But besides that, he doesn't fight that long and that deep. So maybe there's something there. Jiri had the 5th round win over Glover, which, in my opinion, I still think Glover did the dumbest thing shooting for the Gilly there. He had him dead on his feet, but still got the dub in the 5th round. And it's one of those things that maybe that'll be a benefit one way or another to Jiri. But I do have a question for you guys really quickly before we move on. Like, say Jiri does win. Are you ready for a 3rd fight of this? Or do you think they should do a different direction?
I'd be pretty confident they do a 3rd one if Jiri wins. Because I don't think they're dying to give Magomed Ankalaev a title shot. Jamal Hill, I think, needs to win one. And then who else do you have?
Exactly.
So I would say yes.
I also want to see what the odds are for a Madison Square Garden short notice card if John Stipe falls through again in these 2 today.
Don't worry. Let the UFC really try to cook and put on an amazing fight, and then once it falls through, just call them up.
Anthony, would you want to see the trilogy if Jiri wins?
Yeah. I mean, of course. I think these are 2 of the, like I said, 2 of the fighters where if they're fighting, you just tune in and stuff. And Pereira's been phenomenal in his headline events, and that Jiri Rakic fight was really fun too. So I think, these are two fighters that I think, and then the more people watch them and the more they headline too, hopefully, the more their popularity grows and their aura, dare I say. So we'll see. I'd watch these 2 fight more than 3 times, to be honest.
Yep. I think we're all on the same page on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Any closing remarks on the main event before we make our way over to the co-main? All right. Co-main event, Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes. This was another fight that came together on week's notice. This was not originally supposed to be on UFC 303, but when Conor McGregor fell through, they said, well, Anthony Smith can't be the co-main event of a pay-per-view, so we better get a fight. We better get one, and oh boy, they got one. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes. I'm not exactly sure who's going to win this fight. I don't really know what this fight is going to look like. I have no idea. I haven't written the preview for this fight yet because I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm probably going to write that one last because I'm kind of like putting that on the back burner of like, I have no idea what this is even going to remotely look like. So, and to me, that's exciting because there aren't a ton of fights where I look at it and just go, I'm not really sure. There aren't too many fights that have me stumped for an opinion. So I love this fight. What do you guys make of the co-main? Jerry, I believe it is your turn to lead us off.
I mean, this is a fun co-main. This is, like you said, this could go any which way. 2 extremely talented jiu-jitsu artists who are not afraid to stand and bang with each other. Brian Ortega came off that injury against Yair Rodriguez back in 2022, submitted Yair extremely impressively in the 3rd round in Mexico City earlier this year. Meanwhile, Diego Lopes hasn't fought the toughest guys. He made his debut against Movsar Evloev, who is now still undefeated and one of the top featherweights in the division. But beating up guys like Gavin Tucker, Pat Sabatini, Sadiq Youssef is not an easy win, but he made that look easy as well. So he's one of these prospects, possibly the prospect to watch at the 135 division. And it's just one of those fights that I'm with you. I have no idea which way this is going to go. If you had a gun to my head right now, I'd probably lean Ortega just because I've seen him prove himself more against tougher opponents. But at the same time, there's always time for a changing of the guard in the new era to come in. So Diego Lopes could very, very well do that.
Yeah. Kind of like both of you have said. But that's what happens when the UFC actually puts on like great fights. You're not gonna know who's gonna win or have your idea of who's gonna win every time. So I agree. I think Traditionally, I would go Ortega because I believe in the person that's done it. I think he's super skilled, to defeat the prospect. But for some reason, I kind of want to switch it up and maybe say Lopes gets the job done. Like you said, Movsar Evilov, or he fought Movsar, and then Sadiq Youssef is, I think, great. I do understand there is still a big gap in talent between Ortega and Youssef necessarily, right? That in itself is a big step up. But just some of the names Lopes has fought, even though, he hasn't been fighting the top tier people, I think are really good names to have on a resume. And, his striking was really surprised me too in the Youssef fight. Obviously, he's great on the ground. So, while I do think Ortega is, really good, and I think there's a chance he, can maybe just not necessarily blow past the prospect of Lopes, but show you there are really levels. There are gaps. People do got to work their way up. I do think Ortega is very flawed, and his striking's got him in trouble. Many times throughout his career. Like we always joked about, he's good enough to get to the top, but not good enough to not get whooped when he's fighting the top person, whether that be Holloway or Volkanovski. So I think that there are areas because if their ground games cancel out and this becomes a fight on the feet, I don't know how many people are confidently taking Ortega striking. But I will say he did look improved a little bit. He has been looking better and did look improved in the Yair fight. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. This is I'm going back and forth still if I want to choose the prospect to fully take out one of the top dogs and put his name up there in pure title contention at that point, or for Ortega to continue to improve even though he's the older guy. And put on some great performances.
Yeah, and once again, forgot the betting odds, so my bad on that. Very similar odds to the last fight. We got actually the same exact odds. Brian Ortega plus 120 underdog, Diego Lopes minus 142 favorite. So books have the young prospect as the favorite. And one thing that really interests me in this fight is that Brian Ortega said that he had a fight booked at 155. And for UFC 306 at the Sphere, and he took this fight at 145, and win or lose, he's going up to lightweight because he was basically like, I'm not getting a title shot when I lost to Volkanovski and Holloway. So if Ilya fights Holloway, and then the winner of that fights Volk because he deserves another shot because he had the belt for as long as he did, when am I fighting for the title? So I'm going up to 55. So I wonder where his motivation sits coming into this fight. At the same time, I don't think Ortega's the type of guy to be like, well, this one doesn't matter. Let me get a paycheck and let me get whooped and let me, go to 55. I don't think that's the case, but it's just so interesting that he's taking this fight knowing that he's moving up to 55 after this. I think it's a very strange situation that we don't necessarily see all the time. And even when guys are talking about moving up divisions, it's often different. Like Aljamain was talking about moving up to 45 when he was fighting Sean, but he wanted to be a double. He wanted to beat Sean and then get a title fight. Like that's a lot different. And the motivation is still there because then he loses and ends up fighting Cater. So there are situations like that, or you never knew when Pereira was going to move up to 205. But point being, those all had a reason and meaning behind it. And the fights that we're competing in were title fights that had meaning and reason. This is just kind of thrown together for fun, a couple weeks before the fight. So that's another thing that throws me for a loop. I don't know how this fight looks. Like I said, I would assume that the grappling really cancels out and these two are striking with each other. And in that case, Ortega is a guy that gets hit a lot and Lopes is a guy that hits hard. Ortega is also a guy who does not get finished when he gets hit a lot. The only time he got finished via strikes was when Max Holloway got the doctor stoppage after round 4 after he hit him. I couldn't tell you how many times he hit him. Hundreds, literally hundreds of times he hit Ortega before that fight was stopped. So I think this is going to be a striking match, and I think the only way we really see some grappling is if one guy attempts a takedown and the other guy's like, all right, that's fine. I'll like half pull guard while you're taking me down, and I'll grapple with you. Or one guy gets hurt maybe, and someone tries to jump in a ghillie. But I also lean Ortega a little bit just because I trust him over 3 rounds. I think he's better off to win a decision than Lopes, but at the same time, I think Ortega's, if anyone controls this fight with top time grappling, I just said there wasn't going to be much grappling, but if either guy's the guy on top, I expect it to be Ortega. I expect him to land more punches, so I guess I'll go with Ortega, but I'm not confident at all.
Yeah.
That was kind of a long ramble for me having a very unconfident pick, but a lot of thoughts running around in the head.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the exact same way. I'm leaning Ortega, but if this gets striking and it gets out of the first round and a half, 2 rounds, I don't know what's going to happen because Diego Lopes, the only fight he went the distance was with Evaloev in the UFC and lost that one on a decision. The last 3 fights have been first round finishes. Maybe he gasses out. Maybe he doesn't. We've seen Ortega go 5 rounds. And I mean, if it wasn't for Volkanovski having no chin or no neck or the strongest neck in the world, he would have been a champion by now. So he's proven that he can compete at the highest level. And that's the one thing that's kind of sitting in the back of my mind of like, okay, that's why I'm probably leaning him is we'll see what he can do again. And he looked really good in that Jiri fight especially after the shoulder surgery.
Well, I guess that is the draw too about a Ortega pick is if you think the ground's going to get canceled out, which even if it does, I mean, if he gets submitted, props to Lopes. I mean, that would be insane. So, but there's a good chance if it stays on the feet, like we were saying, Ortega's tough. He's been in 5-round wars. He's been there in a lot longer and hit by not even arguably, he's been hit by better strikers. I don't know about power wise. We'll see what the Lopes power continues to look like. But you just know there's a good chance he's going to be there to hear the decision. So I think, well, I said I'm still going back and forth, but I feel like normally I would take the Brian Ortega a little safer, just trust the vet, who is skilled in his own ways. I just think, I don't know, Lopes is on a run right now, and I do really believe Lopes is super talented too. It's not like other prospects where I'm not all bought in. I think that's kind of where I'm hung up on, is because I do believe in Lopes. I just don't know if this is too big of a jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird because he also fought Evloev, so it's like, did that fight give him the experience to fight a guy like Ortega, or was that like a short notice thing and he was just doing what he could? Like, you don't know how that translates until we see this fight. It's a big question as well. One thing I do want to throw out there on the Lopes side, if he submits Brian Ortega, I think it would be something like an Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira submission, where he hits him with something hard. Then maybe he gets on top and goes for an armbar or goes for an arm triangle or something like that, or a guillotine. But I think it'd be more of a club and sub because Ortega's a guy who gets hit hard. And if he drops, like when Yair hurt him, like what was Yair going to do? Jump on top and initiate grappling exchanges? Like, no. But if a guy who has legit submissions can get on top, maybe that's how Lopes finds his finish, hurts him enough on the feet to finish him off with the sub. So I do think that is a path for him. But yeah, I also, like I said, I lean Ortega, but just wanted to throw that out there for Lopes because I do think that's a legit scenario considering Lopez's jiu-jitsu and Ortega's ability to get hit, we'll call it. So, all right. Moving on down this card. This next fight is, I haven't seen anything quite like it, I don't think. I think this is going to be a first for me. Roman Dolidze. Well, Anthony Smith steps in on short notice to fight Carlos Orberg. We can skip the rest. That's when Smith got involved. Anthony Smith, short notice to fight Orberg. Orberg pulls out. Then Dolidze steps in. And Dolidze is coming up from 185 to 205 in this fight on short notice. And in his last fight at 185, he looked like crap against Nasruddin Imavov. He looked like he went from being 30 to being 40 from one fight to the next. And now he's moving up a division to fight a guy who I thought was going to be retired by now, but somehow he's won 2 of his last 3 fights. So this one is this fight is just funny to me. Like in some way, shape, or form, one of these guys is going to win a fight at light heavyweight and get themselves, who knows, maybe another big opportunity. Yeah. Or maybe we just have Anthony Smith going out there and giving the Anthony Smith test to someone new. So this fight is beyond bizarre. The betting odds, I think, are fairly close. Yeah. Anthony Smith, the slight underdog, plus 120 to Dolidze, a minus 142 favorite. So this sports betting company that we won't name because they don't sponsor the show just decided to make the top 3 fights all have the same exact line. So I'm not sure why exactly they did that. But anyways, we have Dolidze as a short favorite to the veteran and the light heavyweight in Anthony Smith. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. What do you make of this, we'll call wacky fight?
Yeah, I don't know. This is definitely a fight, you know. Some people are calling this the people's main event of the card. But no. I don't know. I guess it's fun to really see, I guess, if Anthony Smith can really keep it going. Or if this is about when the loss happens for him to ruin the streak. Done 2 out of the 3. And then also, I don't know, Dolidze, like you said, he did not look good in his last fight. If anything, I thought he looked slow. Give or take, he was fighting, was it Imavov, right? Yep. So, you know, people can look slow compared to him a little bit. And I guess going up, though, he's hoping, you know, he can fight just slower human beings as well that are heavier. So we'll see. I guess I'm leaning Smith overall, and maybe that is bias of what Smith has done recently compared to what Dolidze looked like in his last fight. I also, you know, as much as we always joke, I do think Smith is well-rounded, so there's always that. He is, you know, someone. He's a warrior and stuff, you know, lion. So there's that. I just don't think. I'm trying to get better. I think that could have been the cliff for Dolidze in that last fight, and it instead of, you know, maybe picking him or sticking with him, seeing if he could get back to what he looked like, you know, a couple fights ago. Even I think it might. I'm gonna try the new thing of, you know, not really saying maybe he could get back and start looking at him like this is where he's at now. Because I mean he took a lot of shots in that fight and stuff, but yeah, just looked slow, couldn't really get anything going, and he's not like he has the most variety in his fighting style and his strikes. You know, he has his 1 or 2 things and that's it. And so if they're not working, he's gonna struggle. And I think that's where Anthony Smith, you know, can have the advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning Anthony Smith, I think, mostly because Dolidze is fighting at 205 now. First time since 2020. He was 8-0 while fighting at light heavyweight before. But that was against, on the regional circuit, lesser opponents sort of thing. And Anthony Smith looked surprisingly good against Vitor Petrino as a massive underdog in Rio de Janeiro against the Brazilian. And I think that he's just looked better as of late. Even in his loss to Khalil Roundtree, he got smacked around a bit, but he did get a couple shots in there and dragged it to a 3rd round, whereas Dolidze lost to Imavov and didn't look great doing that. Lost to Vettori. Wasn't the most impressive performance there either from him. So I'm leaning that way, but it's one of those things that I just don't know how Dolidze is going to look at 205. And it is Anthony Smith. So Anthony Smith could come out and look amazing, kind of like he did against Machado, or he could look like a 35-year-old that's still somehow just hanging around and doing it. But Dolidze is moving up and trying to make a run towards the light heavyweight title. No better fight to start with than the Anthony Smith test.
Yeah. So
Oh, he might be breaking up then.
Oh,
Oh, there you
All
go.
right.
Yeah.
Close call there. Sorry. So I like Dolidze in his last fight, just absolutely, I could not anymore. I watched that, and I remember while I was watching that, I thought to myself, this guy may not win another fight in the UFC, so I'm not gonna pick him here because I had that thought. Because if I had that thought watching him fight his last fight, and then I pick him and he loses, I'm gonna feel like a real idiot. I'm gonna feel really stupid. So I'm not even gonna risk that happening. But also, one thing that I don't like for Dolidze is I feel like his game revolved around being bigger and stronger. And I maybe he's bigger and stronger than Anthony Smith because Anthony Smith isn't massive, but like I don't think he's gonna have a big enough advantage to really leverage that to winning the fight. And I think Anthony Smith, for all the flaws he has, I think he's at least smart enough to watch tape and go, okay, this guy throws a big left hook and a big right hook and nothing else. So I just kind of expect Anthony Smith to go back to like his boxing's not bad. Like Anthony Smith will let his 1-2 go and kick the leg, and I think he might just 1-2 and kick the leg all the way to a decision win. Then again, neither of these guys can defend a takedown, so there's also a chance that Dolidze just shoots once, rolls for an ankle, and gets it. And he gets the submission. So it's a really wacky fight, but I kind of have to pick Smith just based off how bad Dolidze looked. And from a stylist perspective, I'll take the guy who's intelligent enough to know that Dolidze is going to come out here, swing big. And Smith, for as much as, he may not be an elite striker, when he's struggled against guys, he struggled against Johnny Walker, who, hey, Johnny Walker's not great, but he's big and long and powerful. Hey, Khalil Roundtree, pretty good. He's really quick and really powerful. So, like, when he's lost to strikers recently, they've been guys who hold, like, serious physical advantages, and I'm not sure that Dolidze is going to have that. So, I'm taking Smith, and I assume it would be a decision unless he lands a clean straight that can knock him out. So my pick is Anthony Smith by decision.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. You bring up the ground game. Anthony Smith got the submission against a Brazilian. Maybe he can do it again against a Georgian. So one of those things. But yeah, no, I see a decision as well. And I was thinking, have we ever seen a fight? Because this has all been the same fight with 5 different fighters involved, with that many changes just to one fight.
I couldn't think of one.
I can imagine because I think they just switch it or like find completely new people. But I don't know.
It was like Jamal and Khalil. Obviously, then Khalil pulled out, so they replaced him with Olberg, and then Jamal pulled out, and Olberg stayed. And here we are with who knows what's going to happen in this fight, but could be entertaining. Maybe it saves the day.
I'm not sure anybody's going to watch this and go, wow, that's a great fight. But I think people may watch this and laugh a little bit.
Yeah. It's going to be like
this might be funny.
It's going to be back-to-back comedic reliefs of fights, I would think.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next one. Mayra Bueno Silva and Macy Chiasson. Mayra Bueno Silva is not currently the hottest name in women's MMA after her last performance against Raquel Pennington that was for the title, and it ended up just being Macy Chiasson, Mayra Bueno Silva on bottom, just there. Yeah. She got real tired real fast and looked real bad. Now we're on the main card of a pay-per-view again. I thought for sure she was going to get buried on the prelims against Macy Chiasson, who her whole career, she's just kind of been there. Like, she's never really looked great. She's never looked outstanding. She's just always been there. Like, she's right there, 10th in the rankings, 8th in the ranking, 12th in the rankings, but you're never like, oh, I need to see a Macy Chiasson fight. I want to see that. So this is a weird one to me. Betting odds have it very, very close. Pick 'em 110 each side. So the sports books just said, screw it. We don't even want to have to deal with this. make it a pick 'em and see what the people do. So that's where we're at. What do you guys make of this outstanding matchup between Mayra Bueno Silva and Macy Chiasson? I don't remember whose turn it is to lead us off. I think it's yours, Jerry. I may be wrong.
I'll start. It'll be quick. If this is anything like the Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva fight, this is a good time. Go get you some food. Come back. You got 15 minutes to kill. Maybe go kill a beer or go do something. You can get a 15-minute run in or a lift. If it's anything like that, which honestly, I can see it happening. Neither of these girls are that exciting. Like you said, I'm surprised we're seeing Mayra Bueno Silva on the main card after her. It looked like she gave up. I don't want to say she did, but it looked like she kind of got on the ground and was like, okay, screw this. I'm done for this fight. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe that won't happen again. And you look at her fight before that, she did beat Holly Holm, but it was ruled a no contest after she tested positive for something. So she got a title fight after popping for something through 5 months later.
To be fair, that was she popped for ADD or ADHD medication or something like that. It wasn't
anything bad then.
It wasn't a Ryan Garcia Osterane or anything like that. So,
all right, so a little bit
allegedly.
But I will also say before that, the 2 straight submissions in the first and then second round, she can be a good fighter, and hopefully that's the fighter we get to see. She can do submissions. She can has 1 knockout win, so she's not going to knock you off your head off, but she'll get you on the ground and grapple. Whereas Chiasson, she has 9 wins, 4 of them by decisions, but won her last one by a submission. I don't know. I don't really have any dog in this fight. I don't really know which one I'm going to pick. This might be one where I flip a coin and be like, okay, yep, I'm fine with that. There's a reason it's a pick 'em. Do want to say I find it funny, and James, I mentioned this to you. Sorry, Anthony, but before the show, the promo video for UFC 303 showed the main card. Obviously, as it always does, usually it's the main event, co-main, and maybe the third. No, they showed 4 fights. The only fight that they didn't show or preview at all was this one. Coincidence?
No. Yeah. No, I was gonna say it started as a pick'em and it stayed as a pick'em because I don't think anyone's put any money on this fight. And I'm fine. I'll really watch this fight. I promise this will be the fight where I'll really key in, and then I'll build my opinion of these women off of this fight. Because I've seen them both fight before. I haven't been watching with the most eagle-eyed, we'll say. I don't know why they continue to put fights like this on main cards, on huge pay-per-views as well. Especially when we were saying there's so many good fights on the undercard. I think you could have slipped either one of them, any one of them on here. But yeah, I don't have much to say. Hopefully, it's entertaining, and then this can give one of them a boost, maybe with a bunch of different eyes on it, since it's a huge pay-per-view. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know why fights like this get the spot they do. Not even because it's a ladies' fight. I know people like to hate on the ladies' fights, but like, why can't we get like Natalia Silva? And if we're gonna do this, why can't it be Natalia Silva? Like, I just don't understand how we end up with the bantamweight division, which is the women's bantamweight division, which is the worst in the sport, when the strawweights and flyweights are both much better and deeper divisions.
Yeah.
With that being said, I actually do think Mayra Bueno Silva is gonna win. It's just, to me, it's kind of like Mayra Bueno Silva, good front choke series. Will choke you out against the cage. She's good with her back up against the fence. Macy Chiasson is just like allergic to not pushing someone up against the fence. So I just think at some point in this fight, Mayra Bueno Silva is just going to get a hold of something and either rip it off or get a hold of her neck and choke her out. So I think Mayra Bueno Silva's subs is going to be anticlimactic up until, oh, that looks kind of deep. Oh, she might choke her out. Oh, she tapped. So that's my prediction. I've got Mayra Bueno Silva in a fight that's just there. It's fine. It's there. So that's my thoughts on Mayra Bueno Silva, Macy Chiasson.
Does Raquel Pennington have a fight set up yet? No. Okay.
No.
I would say this was not this. I don't know if there's even any rumors about this, but a perfect time for if you're gonna have a women's bantamweight fight, might as well make it for this one. Like, why not Juliana Pena? I can't stand her. I'll say that, but Juliana Pena and Kayla Harrison. Make it an entertaining one. Make it two bigger names in the division instead of. I mean, if you ask just most UFC fans, they might know Mayra Bueno Silva from fighting for the belt. Well, a lot of them won't even know Macy Chiasson. It's kind of it's almost like having when Cody Brundage was on the main card.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. That is true. Any closing thoughts before we head on to the next fight, which actually is an entertaining fight?
Yeah.
All right. Next fight we've got on the docket, opening up the UFC 302 main card, Michael Venom Page versus Ian Garry. This is Ian Garry, Ian Machado Garry, hyped up prospect, making his way all the way to the rankings. Michael Venom Page making his way over from Bellator, beats Kevin Holland. Two guys who have nice and shiny records. I believe MVP is 22-2. Ian Garry is, I believe, 14-0. So the winner of this fight actually puts themselves in a position to fight like within the top 5 of this division. So this is actually a really, really important fight. And I think it's going to be a close fight. What do you guys make? Betting odds. Betting odds. All right, betting odds. We've got another close one. Ian Garry minus 155, which is the biggest favorite on this main card. MVP plus 124 as the underdog. Anthony, I believe it is your turn to lead us off. What do you make of the main card opener?
Yeah, I think it's a fun fight, or it's a good fight, I'll say, because there's a chance this fight ends up not being fun and a little boring. But I think it's a good fight between two solid names. Machado's on a good run right there, still prospect level, but continues to beat good names and rank people. Like I'm a big Jeff Neal fan, and so that was a good name to have on your resume. And then obviously MVP kind of dismantled Kevin Holland in that last one and just left them really confused. And so now I'm interested to see if he could do that again to Garry here, who's been winning easy enough, to be honest, against his other competition. So I think I'm, or at least in the beginning of the week, I'm leaning the little upset. I'm actually leaning MVP, and I think he so far has been best suited to maybe win a touch him up here, get in, get out fight against the distance against Garry, as Garry's been kind of beating people that way. And I think MVP is the best suited to win a decision that way as well. You saw how confused he had Holland and how he wasn't really hittable for Holland. And I don't think he's going to be that hittable for Garry. So I don't think he's going to have to worry too much about the knockouts. And I know Garry's range is huge, but I'm going to take MVP speed to win some of those exchanges. And I could definitely see this being a fight where there's only maybe like 4 exchanges, in a whole round that really matter. And I'm going to take maybe MVP speed to get in and get out and, look better to the judges and maybe win a decision.
Yeah, I can see this being a decision fight, and I'm really liking Garry. I think he's entertaining. I think his style early on was a lot of fun to watch. But it's concerning that he's gone from knocking out people in the first rounds to a unanimous decision over Neil Magny and then a split decision with Jeff Neal. Seems like he's slowly digressing as he gets, and I mean, not a surprise. He's fighting tougher and tougher competition, but this seems like a trap for Ian Garry, where I don't know if the odds are right. I would see this one just as much as pick 'em. I might, as far as betting goes, lean to MVP just because he is that underdog, and he did look surprisingly strong against Kevin Holland. But I think that was also the aspect of no one's really watched him in no one's seen him against like UFC competition. Had a completely weird style that freaked out Kevin Holland and seemed to just confuse the hell out of him. Did what he had to do, but it's one of those things where you get in, get out, land some shots, leg kick, jabs, whatever you have to do to avoid being hit back, and that's something MVP is really good at. The thing that I think Ian Garry might have an advantage with in this aspect is he's Irish, Michael Venom Page is English, so they both have. I know MVP never fought in Cage Warriors, but they would have had an eye on each other in terms of that. I know Ian Garry's a little bit younger, but at the same time, if you're watching it in that part of the world, it's Conor McGregor, Michael Venom Page were the guys you start out watching, and maybe that's something that he's watched him enough that he understands what he's getting himself into. I'm still not sure which way this fight goes, but I think I'm going to lean towards MVP right this very second. Just I can see Ian Garry taking a shot and getting him, and with the way this division's going, anything's possible. You have no idea what's going to happen. No one thought Leon Edwards would knock out Kamaru Usman and all the other fights of people just rising up to the top. I just want to see a good, entertaining fight that opens up the main card before we have, like we said, two weird fights.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what Anthony said in the fact that I don't know that this may not be the most entertaining fight. And if we're just playing the dance around, oh, here's a jab, oh, here's a 1-2, oh, we're going to circle around the octagon and pretend like I just did, the craziest thing you've ever seen. And there's not going to be many exchanges. We're not going to trade much. Like MVP is just so fast that I think he has an advantage in the get in and out of the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I really hate picking fighters that are 37 that rely on athleticism. But we saw at UFC 299 that the athleticism is still there. And this isn't like way later and it's not like it was months. It's not like it's been months, and it's not like it's been a year since we've seen the athleticism. It was fairly recently. So I think he's going to have the edge in speed and athleticism in a matchup that I think is going to be, let's see who can get in and land the 1-2 a little bit more frequently. So I think that can lead to him slightly outstriking Garry and winning 2 of the 3 rounds. I also think he has more power than Garry. So if I had to line one of these guys who's more likely to get the knockout, I'd say it was more likely that MVP steps inside, perfectly times a right hand or an elbow or something like that, and hurts Ian Garry, we've seen him rock. We've seen Ian Garry go out there and get dropped by Kenan Song. So it wouldn't be the first time he's been dropped in the UFC. So I lean with MVP as with that side of things as well. That said, it's not like Ian Garry can't win this fight. He's a favorite for a reason. If he goes out there and kicks the leg and takes some of that speed away, all of a sudden it's going to swing in his favor a lot more. Let's see how much he's able to do that. Maybe he goes out there and he decides for the first time in the UFC wants to proactively wrestle and chase submissions. Maybe he does that and lands a submission. I would not be surprised at all if he gets the submission. I think that might actually be his best past the victory is cage pushing into grappling and to landing some takedowns. I think that actually would be very smart of him. I'm just not convinced that he will do it. I think he may go out there and try and outstrike the fun and flashy striker. And then maybe he goes to grappling in round 3 when he's down 2 rounds and ends up losing the decision because he wanted to go out here and be the flashy striker and outstrike MVP. So I've got MVP, but like I said, I see paths for Ian Garry. I would be shocked if he gets it done either, but the pick will be MVP in the preview.
Yeah, I mean, Garry in itself, obviously, you're not undefeated without being skillful on the feet, although he might not be like a knockout artist. He is definitely a skillful striker and good at getting his hand raised. And he was dominant against, I just blanked on his name.
Neil Magny?
Yes, on the ground. So he probably should have got to finish that fight. But, I guess controlling it to that extent is controlling it to that extent. So yeah, I agree. That's why I'm not a huge Michael Venom Page is a lock, heavily leaning, but I do confidently I am leaning that way. or I'm leaning that way, at least solid. It's not as up in the air as like those other fights. And I also think I can't imagine. I feel like the way Garry fights, really good at range, gauging range, and tapping the strikes out there, the jabs, the kicks, everything. I can't imagine he's fought someone with the reach difference like that because Michael Venom Page's reach is also 79 inches. So I feel like that could, for his whole range-based game, could throw him off that Michael Venom Page is the quicker one with a longer reach. I feel like that could get to Garry a little bit. So.
Yep, I would agree with that. Anything else on this main card before we wrap it up and get to some final thoughts on the rest of the card?
No, it should be fun. I'm excited for it. Not quite what we thought it was going to be, but should be just as entertaining.
Yep. If you didn't know Conor McGregor was supposed to be on this card, you wouldn't be disappointed at all. It's just the fact that he's not there. It's kind of like, crap, we're missing out. So
it actually got better with some of the fights they added a little bit.
It's at least deeper. Without a doubt, it's deeper. All right. And some of that depth comes on the prelims. So final thoughts. There are honestly plenty of fights to pick from. Either you guys have one that's sticking out and you want to lead us off?
I mean, I can. I have two guys who I'm interested in seeing. I always like watching Charles Jourdain fight. He just seems entertaining every time he does. So him against Jean Silva as the one, third to last fight of the prelims should be fun and entertaining. The other one, more curiosity than anything, Ray Tsuruya, Japanese guy. He won the Road to UFC flyweight tournament earlier this year with a first round knockout. Got a submission in the quarterfinals and then decision in the semis. So making his UFC debut. I'm curious to see how he looks against Carlos Hernandez, but that should just be an entertaining fight because starting out with a flyweight fight for him, be entertaining and always fast paced.
My two will be Touchy Philly versus Cub Swanson. Big Touchy Philly fan from Team Alpha Male. Also do like some Cub Swanson fights, but that man is 40. Although didn't he get a good little win in his last one too, which was a switch up. Obviously, I guess he had fought Jonathan Martinez before that, which is a tough fight for him, for anyone. So I don't know. I'm worried. I think this could be a good one. I think Cub still got a little bit. He hasn't hit the complete wall, even though he is 40. And then to be fair, Andre Fili's 34, so it's not like he's the young gun anymore. Too. He's been around, but I think we should. I think this one will be a good fight. Some fun striking, and overall, I don't know. Like it's just tough. He is 40, but I think if he can put on another good performance, Cub Swanson himself, I think Andre Fili's always there to put on a good performance. Sometimes he just gets beat quicker, or caught. But I think this could be a fun match right here. And then the other one I would pick out would just be one of the newer guys, Peyton Talbot. Obviously, I feel like he is getting a little bit of a push, which is random when we first talked about him, just training out of Reno. And I know he looked good. I guess he came from the Contender Series. So that's probably why Dana is like uber focused on anyone from there to try to give him a huge push. But yeah, I was seeing on just the UFC media this week that his name's out there a little bit more and stuff. And so, he has another chance to go prove it, prove his skills. Because he is a well-rounded fighter. So here's another. And they threw him a layup. That's why I'm confused. They didn't put him. I mean, I guess he's not on the early prelims. I thought this could have been a little higher up with the push that they're trying to give him. But yeah, this is a layup to at least put another highlight on his resume.
Yeah. So just to bounce off some things you guys said, because I agree with a lot of them. Andre Fili, Cub Swanson, loved that fight. Jourdain, Gene Silva, loved that fight. Shout out to Andre Fili for trying to unite the world in his media day press conference. So if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, go see Andre Fili's quotes about the one thing that everybody in the world loves. He's not wrong. Anyways, Peyton Talbot also fighting Giannis Gamori, and Peyton Talbot released a YouTube video calling him Giannis Gay Mori. So shout out Peyton Talbot.
That's crazy.
And he is a minus 2,000 favorite, minus 1,600 in some spots. So he is quite the favorite this weekend. He may close as the biggest favorite in UFC history. So some wild things going on there. And I'm also very excited for Ray Saruya as well. Interested in those fights. But two I'll add real quick. Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I like Joe Pyfer. Jack Hermanson wasn't his night. His last loss. I'm interested to see how he comes back against Marc-Andre Barriault, who I think is fairly good, and I don't think that's a layup for him at all. I think that's fairly tough. I think that's more of a prove it spot than a layup spot for him. And then the very first fight on the early prelims, we have Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Oliveira. Ricky Simón has been a guy with a lot of talent for a long time and just hasn't been able to rise up those bantamweight rankings. Vinicius Oliveira, contender series guy, in his UFC debut, he landed a flying knee against Bernard Sopaj, and that's right up there for knockout of the year. It's either the best knockout or the second best knockout, depending on your opinion on things. So when you put someone out cold and baptize them and win $50,000 in your first UFC fight, I'm interested to see what you do in your second one. So keep an eye on Vinicius Oliveira to open the card. And overall on this card, a lot of good fights. That's the very first fight of the night, Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Oliveira. So we're starting it off with the fun one, right into Ray Saruya, Andre Arlovsky, Michelle Waterson-Gomez. So even the early prelims had some appealing fights. The prelims are 4 for 4. I think this is a great prelims for a pay-per-view. So I'm actually really excited to watch this one from top to bottom. There's a lot of really good fights coming on Saturday, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
I did want to say,
Go ahead.
real quick, I did want to say, my other pick I was going to say was just Andre Arlovsky. Shout out I'm not going to call him the GOAT, but, very well respected, historic career. He's 45 years old, still fighting. Love to see it. I know he's on a 3-fight skid, but hopefully he can turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, should be fun from the get-go to the final main event. Hey, maybe we see a flying knee to open it up, and that'll get the Vegas crowd really into it. Yep. At least those who are there for the early opening fights.
Thank God we're back in Vegas too, because I was watching the fights. I didn't have the sound on a whole lot of the time, but I heard the crowd was just not that great at Saudi Arabia. Was it?
The crowd and Mayra Bueno Silva had a lot of commonalities. They're just kind of they're just there. They're just present. Not really giving you much, but they were there.
Because you know how hyped I was with the Whitaker knockout, but I was fine. Like I said, I was watching. I wasn't able to have the sound on, but then I saw on social media a bunch of people like that was like the weakest crowd reaction to an insane knockout, like one of ever.
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
I assume you guys saw they've announced like the Noches night fight, but it's like the Riyadh.
Yeah, that's insane.
Some more Saudi Arabia involvement there.
This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It's Mexican Independence Day card.
I know it's Mexican Independence Day. Can we please just celebrate Mexicans a little bit? No, okay. Nope. That's what the only thing too is because they pander. Like it's Dana will fucking pander to Mexicans and he'll be he's trying to support and all this stuff, and then he turns around as soon as anything happens and then completely halves the celebration. So it's I don't know. Yeah. It just seems disingenuous. He just wants for money. But also, I'm not gonna never hate on getting to watch a full card of Mexicans and see cool stuff. So I was there for it, and then I don't know why. Then he just switches it.
Yeah, as long as this Rinya thing, it's stupid and annoying. But please, let's not turn it into half Mexicans and half.
Yeah, just
we don't need Magomed Ankalaev on the card.
Uh-huh.
We don't need Abubakar Nurmagomedov on the card. We're going to Saudi Arabia enough. Keep them there, and let's have the fun. Those are supposed to be fun fights on that card. Let's not make it a boring fight night where we have minus 500 grapplers just go out there, get 3 takedowns, and get the most boring decisions you've ever seen.
Yeah. I agree.
That's my
just question before we start. Do we have a main event for that yet?
No, soon probably, I assume, because they announced 305, so that's the next one to get announced.
Yeah.
So right now they're probably doing that, and 307 is in Utah. So yeah, so
they really do love Utah.
Yeah, I think Utah loves the UFC and spent the money to get the UFC pay-per-views. I think that's how that
is that why? Okay, I was gonna say, what is?
Yeah,
got to be more money there or something.
Yeah. So for UFC, for the Sphere, it's probably gonna be 1 to 2 fights: Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili, or Max Holloway, Ilya Topuria. Would be those are my guesses for that. So
I'm still thinking we see Grasso and Shevchenko as the co-main.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
has
I'd assume so.
is the main.
Yeah,
main event. Topuria and Max co-main.
Co-main.
Sean and Merab opening up the prelims.
I actually don't hate the Grasso Shevchenko main event when they did a free fight night last year with the title on the line. That was really cool if they did that. Now with the pay-per-view, you no longer get to do that, but it was fun when they did it last year.
Also,
and then in a draw.
Yeah, that's
actually they could put Sean. Sean says he's Mexican, so they could put him actually
and
as
so
the main event.
So does Merab. You saw him wearing the poncho and the Mexican flag and all that.
Yeah, in the Cejudo build-up.
That's a little bit of reach, but I'll give it to him. We support it. He can come to the cookout. I don't know if it's.
That's funny. All right. Any closing thoughts on UFC 303 or UFC happenings in general before we close the show today? Nothing? All right. Tomorrow, UFC preview will be out. UFC 303 preview will be out. UFC 303 best bets will be out. So thank you for tuning in to 8-Sided Freaks. If you want written previews of the main card and then whichever bets I pick, which I don't know which ones they are, so they might be main card, might be prelims. I don't know yet. Those will be out tomorrow. VendettaSportsMedia.com. But thank you for tuning in to 8-Sided Freaks. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that, and return next week when we recap these fights. Thank you, and we'll see you.